Hello everyone, and as I did on my last video, I just want to remind everyone that together we can recommend these improvements. Together we can really highlight what works, what doesn't, and what needs fixing inside Britain. And by request, tonight I'm doing a more detailed review of the housing crisis because the frustration out there is real and people do want answers. So as usual, before we begin, a quick disclaimer. So this review is based on my own observations, my professional background and my experience watching the housing system operate as a member of the public. It's not financial advice and it is not a criticism of people working in construction or housing services, even planning. My perspective comes from years of corporate leadership, particularly in health, safety, security, environment and well-being, where accountability, process discipline and professional conduct are essential. I'm applying those same principles here. The people on the ground are doing their best within a structure that's broken. My aim is to highlight the operational issues, share insights from my professional background and to encourage constructive improvement because this housing crisis really matters and we all want it to improve. So this is a full leadership review on the housing crisis, a division responsible for one of the most fundamental human needs, shelter, but it's operating with the system, processes and decision making of a company that still thinks supply and demand is an optional concept. And I want to be clear, I grew up in the 1980s, a time when buying a home felt achievable, renting felt stable and social housing actually existed. Today the experience is very different, and with my background in corporate leadership I'm going to analyse the housing crisis in the same way that I would any business that is underperforming, not with emotion and not with politics but with the operational reality in the day-to-day. Supply and demand, the fundamental failure. In a well-run organisation, supply meets demand. If demand increases, supply increases. Housing crisis limited, demand has skyrocketed and supply has stayed exactly where it is in the early 2000s. The UK population has grown by over 8 million people since 2001, yet house building has rarely moved. If this were a business, the board would be asking why the shelves are empty and the customers are queuing around the block. And the price problem. In a functioning market, prices reflect the value. At the moment, they reflect panic. They've risen over 160% since the mid-90s, while salaries have only risen by 70%. Renting is the financial equivalent of running on a treadmill that's slightly too fast. If this were a corporation, the CFO would be asking why the production has become unaffordable to the target audience. And the rental experience. In a well-run organisation, customers receive consistent, reliable service. At the moment, renting is a lottery. Some landlords are excellent, some are enthusiastic amateurs, and some treat housing like a side hustle with no customer service department. Repairs take weeks, deposits vanish into the ether. Tenants have a constant fear that somebody's selling the property. In 2023, a survey found that 1 in 5 experienced illegal attempts to get them out of the property. In any other business, the customer retention rate would be 0. And the vanishing product line. Once upon a time, social housing was a core product line, affordable, stable, reliable. Today, it's a limited edition collector's item. The UK has around 1.2 million households waiting for availability. If this were a corporation, the board would be asking why the essential product's been discontinued. And the bottleneck. In a well-run organisation, planning is streamlined. At the moment, planning is a bottleneck wrapped in red tape, dipped in bureaucracy and left to dry in a filing cabinet somewhere. Applications take months or years, decisions are inconsistent, the process is so complex that even the people running it look confused. A 2022 report found that major planning applications take an average of 9 months, and that's before construction even begins. If this were a business, the COO would be asking why the approval process takes longer than the actual build. And build quality, safety and the environment. Let's talk about the areas that I know the best. Health, well-being, safety, environment and security. New builds are often rushed, corners are cut, fire safety is inconsistent, ventilation is questionable, environmental standards vary wildly. In 2021, an inspection found that over 50% of new builds had major defects requiring correction. In any other organisation, this would be a red flag risk. Here, it's simply accepted as the way things are. If this were a corporation, the health and safety audit would highlight these every 2 minutes. And the human cost, homelessness. In a well-run organisation, vulnerable customers are supported. The homelessness here is treated like an unavoidable side effect. Over 280,000 people in England are homeless or in temporary accommodation. Families are moved from hotel to hotel. Support services stretch beyond capacity. If this were a business, a board would be asking why the emergency department has become the main service. And the 1980s comparison. So I know I'm old. When I was young, in the 80s, it felt very different. You could buy a home on a normal salary. Renting was stable. Housing was available. The system felt functional. Today, the housing market feels like a casino where the house always wins. If this were a corporation, the board would be asking why the product has become inaccessible to the very people it was actually designed for. And the investor effect. In a well-run organisation, investment supports growth. Investment here within housing often competes with the customers. Homes are bought as assets, not places to live. Entire developments are snapped up before the public even sees them. First-time buyers are left fighting over whatever's left. If this were a business, the board would be asking why wholesale buyers are allowed to empty the shelves before the retail customers arrive. And risk management. In a well-run organisation, risk is assessed and mitigated. At the moment, risk is managed by hoping the market sorts itself out. Affordability risk, homelessness risk, construction risk, safety risk, economic risk, all high, all predictable, all largely unaddressed. If this were a corporation, the risk register would be a risk in itself. So where's the housing actually going? People are frustrated and they're right to be. This is a question everyone's asking. Where is the housing actually going? So here is the actual reality. Demand will continue to rise. Supply is not increasing fast enough. Prices will remain high until something changes. Renting will stay unstable without regulation. Social housing will remain scarce without investment. Planning delays will continue unless it's sorted. In other words, that is shaping the market. The system isn't on track to fix itself. In any company, the board will be demanding a new strategy, a new leadership team, a new operational model, and measured performance targets. Without structural change, the frustration people feel today will be the same in 5, 10, even 20 years' time. And that's why this conversation matters. So what would a well-run company do? A competent organisation would increase supply, streamline planning, enforce safety standards, invest in social housing, regulate renting, support the vulnerable customers, measure performance, and then act on it. In other words, it would behave like a business that wants to survive. And the future state, imagine housing with affordable homes, stable renting, fundamental planning, safe construction, available social housing, a supported workforce and a leadership team that listens to what's going on and looks at the market. Again, it just isn't happening. So this all isn't failing because of the people. It's a structure. If Britain were a real business and this was part of it, the leadership team would be constantly reviewing this process and rebuilding systems, investing in the people. Instead, it continues to function without any structure. Not because of it, it's a real theme. So I do want to do more of these videos and look at more of what you want to get more in depth about. So if there's anything that needs a spotlight, anything you want me to review next, if you've got in-depth knowledge, please leave it in the comments, because this country is failing and people need to be asking tougher questions. On this channel, we will continue to do so. So thanks for watching and welcome to Britain the Corporation.